It's great to have Hannah, trainee youth worker from Union Baptist Church, joining us today as we continue to look at the life of Peter. Today we're exploring the part of Peter's story where he steps out of the boat in faith and walks on water. Whether this is a story that you've heard loads of times before or not a lot, can I encourage you now to pause this video, to grab a Bible and to check it out in Matthew chapter 14 verses 22 to 34. In this story we see Peter looking out of the boat and calling to Jesus, saying, "Jesus, call me." And as Jesus calls Peter from that boat, Peter steps out in faith, keeping his eyes focused on Jesus, and begins to walk on the water. And I think sometimes in our journey as Christians, we feel a little bit like Peter. We're in the safety and security of our boat. But actually we can see Jesus ahead, calling us on to something new. And so we have a choice to make. Are we going to step out in faith to pursue that new calling that Jesus has for us? So Hannah, I wonder whether you have any experiences that you can share with us of you, where you've had to make that choice to step out in faith, to take that step out of the boat and walk towards where Jesus is calling.
Yeah, so just taking on the youth worker in training role at Union Baptist, because I'd been the gap worker before that, and then before that I had worked in schools, so I was not anticipating taking on the role. I didn't think it was something that I would be any good at or anything that God would possibly want me to do. It was like this far off, that's not me, I'm going to go and continue doing drama. But I really felt that God was calling me to do it, and I really felt like that was what he was saying was the right thing for me to do. So I prayed about it, I got other people to pray about it, and I applied for the job, and I got through. So that was my step out in faith.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Hannah. And we see in Peter's story that Peter, after stepping out in faith, Peter for a moment takes his gaze off of Jesus, and he looks down instead at the waves crashing up around him. And Peter starts to become consumed by those waves, starting to sink, because he's taken his gaze off of Jesus. I wonder, Hannah, have you ever had that kind of experience where actually it's felt like maybe you can't do it, like you're starting to sink, and like you're not quite sure where the next step is?
Yeah, so it's quite a big role, youth work. We've got a lot of responsibility, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of just lots of little jobs that you've got to do, and I think sometimes that can feel very overwhelming. It can feel, I can get quite anxious because I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think that this is really what God called me to do, and then in those times you really can feel like you're completely like troubling them.
Brilliant, thank you. And in Peter's story we see actually that when Peter is walking along on that water, he's got his gaze fixed solidly on Jesus. And actually as he starts to sink, we see Jesus coming over to him, lifting him up out of that water and placing him back in that boat. And so actually for us as Christians, when we find ourselves in those challenging times where we've taken out that step of faith and then we feel like we're starting to sink, it's important that we too find those ways that we can fix our gaze on Jesus and that we can look to him for that advice and support. And so Hannah, I wonder, in those times where actually you feel like you are thinking like there's just so much happening around you, how do you find the time and what ways do you use to refocus on Jesus?
I think a good one is to have Bible verses up around you, or to just read the Bible. I find so much comfort in that, and remembering that if God's called you out to that new position, then God's going to help you to do that. So he's not, doesn't just like, Peter had his gaze on Jesus, but Jesus also had his gaze on Peter. Jesus was looking at Peter the whole time. He wasn't just like trolling off. He knew when he was starting to sink, and he went to go and get him. And it's just that. So having Bible verses around, reading your Bible. Also having Christian friends. So I know that might not be for everyone the way forward, but if you have at least one Christian that you can talk to about what you're going through, having someone that will pray with you and support you in that and remind you too to fix your gaze on Jesus, I find that really helpful. I'm part of like a prayer trio, and we all kind of share everything that's going on and really support each other. I find that really helpful. Worship as well, listening to worship music, that I guess it's helpful because, like the Psalms, a lot of worship music can speak into how you're feeling now. So it reminds you that other people have felt that way, and God has lifted them out of that. So yeah, good Christian friends in prayer, reading the Bible and having uplifting verses around you, and always reminding yourself that you're not doing it by yourself, that Jesus is walking with you and he will lift you up. So no matter how overwhelmed you feel, Jesus is there with you and he will help you in that situation because he's called you to that situation in the first place. You never get called to something you can't do, no matter how it might you feel.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing with us today. Can I just finish by encouraging all of you, if you are in that boat thinking that Jesus is calling you to take that step of faith out, go for it. As Hannah shared, find those ways that help you to fix your gaze on Jesus and let him be the one to support you as you take that step of faith. Even when the waves might start crashing up against you, focus your gaze on Jesus and see what amazing adventures he calls you out into.